We've seen our storyline. Magnus Carlsen survived in that last game. These endgame geometry that Maurice was pointing at. So beautiful. Such a big miss by Fedoseev. He starts with the black pieces. If Magnus gets the dub in this one, if he wins with white, it's match over for Fedoseev. So he needs to make sure things stay under control. And speaking of things staying under control, I think this is an opening that needs to be broken down, David. Knight takes e4, offering white to pick up that knight. It looks like it's for free.
It looks like it's for free. This is the four-night Scotch, as we call it, one of the most drawish openings, if you believe top grandmasters, but not this move. Fedoseev throwing a knight away. I'm just going to show a quick action replay before it's too late. There we go, of black's last move. Let's go back a couple of turns. It was here after knight takes d4, knight takes e4, a big shock. The main move in that position being, for example, bishop out to b4. But instead, knight takes e4 on the board, and Magnus, wow, he goes for a variation that's forcing the queens off again. Just slow action replay here. Knight takes knight would have been met by a couple of different moves, but queen to e7 is one of them. You pin, and you do win back the material due to this line and the white queen being tied down to the white knight in the center. Let's catch up with the game, however. Just a temporary knight sacrifice, but Magnus instead playing a different variation, trading everything off. And let's just bring that game back for you. And wow, let's see. He's a piece down if I'm to trust the live board right now. I'm going to try and fix what we've got in front of us. But level material, Robert, looks, at least to my eyes, like Magnus has been caught off guard in these early stages.
Well, as we catch up with the live position, the queens are off, and that doesn't mean that the game just concludes. So we see underneath me here that the king for black is out in the open. The king for white is uncastled and will not legally be able to castle. But while I have a quick second, I mean, I do want to shout out Maurice one more time. And I said I was one of Maurice's biggest fans. It's true. I can't believe I'm saying this publicly, but Tanya, I know you'll appreciate this. When I was a kid, Maurice was at a tournament playing, doing analysis, all that stuff. And I was too nervous to go up to him and ask for his autograph. I was like 9 years old. And my mom, you know, she's ever the bold character. She just storms right over to where Maurice is. It's like, my son, he's a big fan of yours. Can he get an autograph? I don't know if we have a photo. I'll have to ask my parents. But ever since I was a kid, I've had so much respect for Maurice. I'm honored to call him a friend. And now that we have said that, I'm happy to go back into the chess where there's a check against the Black King out in the open.
The deadly, well, I was going to say deadly. It's not that deadly. The Black King can retreat. I'm just so used to all those king marches. Maurice name dropped some of those great king walks of all time. And I don't think we'll see the Black King continue its journey down the board, out into the open. It's, well, hopefully learned a lesson from Maxime Vachier-Lagraf's king. We'll see the Black King surely just retreat and drop back. There we go, to safety. And now the game will take a slower turn. Black's bishops can come out to very nice, sensible squares. I think roughly level position. The fireworks in this game happened right off the bat, really, really early. And yeah, just before we move on from Maurice, I just want to shout out to him as well. I remember one of my first chess memories watching his commentary, 1994, those Intel Rapid tournaments where he was commentating with Danny King, and that got me into this beautiful game. So a big shout out to one of our chess heroes. And in the meantime, Tanya even.
I'm honored. But David, I'm going to join both of you in that I'm also a big Maurice Ashley fan. I think he knows it. I've always been so inspired by him. I've seen him commentate. I've worked alongside him. And I think, of course, he's a really strong player, was a really strong player, but even his commentary, it's been so amazing to watch how he's changed that, the energy that he got into the game. It's influenced, I think, so much of chess broadcast. And Robert, I don't know if you remember this, but for me, one of my first commentating experiences was Millionaire Chess, and a chance that Maurice gave me all the way from India. He called me, and you and I covered that event together, and it's one of my core memories, and I enjoyed it so much. And yeah, I think everyone in chat, everyone here commentating, we're all Maurice Ashley fans. Maurice,
yeah, maybe,
you're awesome.
Except for that one kid in the video where Maurice slaps all the pieces off the board. I feel like I've seen that a couple of times where he's imitating searching for Bobby Fischer. But we are in the midst of a heated match between Magnus Carlsen and Vladimir Fedoseev. So sorry for distracting. I just wanted to give Maurice that shout out, and it's always great to be joined by him. But I don't think it's always great to be playing Magnus Carlsen. When you slip up in a winning position and you start kicking yourself, that's when Magnus, I feel like he is feeling his most confident. He's probably upset that he allowed Fedoseev all that play, but now he says, I can survive even that terrible endgame. And what do we make of this, David? I mean, there are so many tactics in this position, even without queens on the board, some loose pawns, some open lines against each king. Would you say that Magnus or Fedoseev is happier to be in this position?
I think Magnus is happier that he's still ahead in the match because he really was kind of fortunate to survive that previous game. Fedoseev deserved the win there. But as you say, you cannot relax against Magnus Carlsen. I was writing this off as a level draw-ish, but not drawn yet. And like you say, tactics in the air. Wow. Including this move. I was going to say, there were tactics like Bishop takes f2, which would have walked into a pin on the last move, but Magnus first deflecting away the black king, forcing the king to move in order to win the black bishop. So actually a level trade in the end, but Magnus now has the opportunity to capture this pawn to hope that he gives his opponent an isolated pawn, something to work with potentially long-term in the game. Isolated pawns tend to be weak in endgames with rooks. So, okay, mixed feelings here. Magnus, he could, if he's feeling safe, just retreat his rook back, but then black will take on his terms on the c4 square, giving white the isolated pawn. So I'm going to stick to my original evaluation, say it should be a draw with best play, but we all know Magnus. That endgame touch, those endgame skills, Fedoseev still needs to bring his best in order to counter. And I suggest starting with a rook move to win this pawn. Yeah, don't take it back with the pawn, he plays it. And he keeps the integrity of his pawn chain intact. Connected pawns tend to be better than isolated ones. Tanya, draw prediction here, or am I wrong?
I really like that last move by Fedoseev. I think it's a key move to keep the balance going. And look at this. Magnus makes sure that he can really trade on d5 on his terms, get that isolated queen spawn, something to play for long term. Game one that Magnus won. It was the queens got traded early on, and yet he kept fighting. He got the dub in this one as well. I have no doubts that he's going to try and create something. The one thing that white is aiming for is to force black to take on d5. The bishop falls back to d6. Rook goes to g5. g7 is hanging. This is getting tactical because black is yet to capture on d5. Fedoseev, Robert, he needs to be careful right now.
And we see that there's only one move here that holds the balance for black, rook to h7. It's a very natural move, protecting your pawn next to your king that's loose and keeping contact with the h5 pawn. So Fedoseev, I mean, he just outplayed Magnus in an endgame. So I know that I often lead the charge talking about how strong Magnus is in the endgame, and it is true. Fedoseev, I mean, he had his chances, and maybe he'll have chances in this one. But while he sits and thinks, why don't we zoom out for a second? Because we could have a winner's bracket finalist after this game on the left-hand side of our screen. Denis Lazovic is up 1.5 to half. 2.5 points sees you sail through. And with the black pieces in this position, oh, David, I'm looking at this one. I'm thinking I would love to have the space that Denis has been able to secure for himself.
He's won Connect 4, my favorite game other than chess. He's got this phenomenal pawn chain, and this pawn chain, not only is it beautiful, but it blunts this dark square bishop. I mean, calling it a bishop feels wrong somehow. Doesn't roll off the tongue where pieces like this one sadly staring down at a bunch of pawns. Also, looking at the white king, it's not going to feel safe anytime. It can no longer castle kingside. The white rook has moved on g1. It doesn't really feel comfortable castling on the other flank either, because you've pushed a pawn out to b4, meaning the king will be really airy long term. So I like his space, Denis Lazovic. My question, Tanya, what does white try to do to break the bind, to break this Connect 4 pawn formation?
It's really hard. They say that to break a pawn chain, you have to attack the base, but the base is far behind on c7. It's so hard to get to that. You are thinking about ideas like perhaps a4, expanding on the queen side, maybe an eventual b5, b6. We will see that pawn chain, the base being into trouble. But right now, the first thing that Jose has to think about is taking care of the king side, his own king position as well. And I like this move by Denis. He gets rid of the active bishop that was on b3, the light squared bishop, with white's king in the center. Denis is not only eyeing the kingside advance, but a potential d5 break to really start asking questions. White isn't feeling safe on the queen side with the pawns advanced. Once d5 comes in, the center opens up as well. So bishop e6, d5 ideas in the air. I'm liking black's position here, Robert.
One reason I would potentially refrain from d5, even though I think objectively it's a great move, is it does give white a little bit more breathing room. That white's pieces are cramped, and he goes for d5, and the evaluation bar, it doesn't react. So as you said, as I said, great decision. It's a very strong move from Denis. But I think practically speaking, then now some of white's pieces will get a little bit more space, because when you're cramped, you want to trade. So I would take this pawn on d5, try to quickly put my knight on e4, and at least I start to see space, some ideas, some threats. Denis doesn't mind. Tanya, you didn't mind either. And David, well, now the question is, what do you think about that latest decision? Are you also a fan like Tanya and Denis himself?
I would say yes, but it's all about this bishop. I think here, I still favor black. I think all of us would, purely because of this piece, purely because of the fact that the white king can't castle. But I'm caught in two minds, Robert. You probably heard the hesitation on my voice, because at least now white has one compensating factor. It's a beautiful outpost on e4, one that you can never really challenge. So yeah, it's kind of mixed feelings. It feels like Denis a bit impatient now. He senses the finishing line in this match. He's 1 point ahead. A win with black here would end it on the spot. No need to go the distance in the fourth game. And he's trying to rush, but he doesn't need to. He's got the long-term advantage. He has to just ensure now that white isn't able to, for example, push this pawn forward, move this rook out the way, relocate this bishop to a new diagonal. It's going to take 4 or 5 moves. But Denis cannot allow the opponent that luxury. And okay, another question mark attached to this move. I think it's actually quite a healthy one. The knight on the rim wasn't great. But now, what is the idea? What's he going to do if white simply sets up this barricade of pawns? Tanya, do you like it as much as you did just 2-3 moves ago for black?
I'm going to be honest, I thought it was an idea that you want to prepare a little bit first. Get your rook into the game, perhaps transfer the knight from c6 to a better square, maybe bring back the knight on h5. Denis decided to go for it immediately. And this e4 square, it really looks like a stronghold right now. Looks like everything is under control. That said, I'm still surprised with the question mark awarded to knight to f6, because it feels like the most natural move. The knight on h5 isn't doing anything. You want to trade off your opponent's most active piece in the center. David, f3 on the board. And the big question is, how does black follow up? To me, it looks natural that you want to start placing the rooks into the center of the board. You want to get one rook to d8. You want to get the other rook to e8. But then you have to watch out for ideas like b5. Meanwhile, Denis just decides to get rid of the minor pieces. If you take with the knight, I think he wants to jump in with knight d5, knight e3.
Sorry, I was just quickly going to note that the other game between Magnus Carlsen and Vladimir Fedoseev has concluded as a draw. There wasn't much to it. A few pieces came off. Magnus still sitting in his chair, probably looking over that opening before getting into the next game, using that game review feature. But for Fedoseev, I think when he clicks on game review, he'll say, all right, I played like a boss, nearly perfect chess from the black side. He was never in danger. So all of our attention will be back to the left-hand side of our screen between Jose Martinez and Denis Lazovic, at least until the fourth game, because there will be a fourth game between Magnus and Vladimir. But for now, I'm starting to see Jose with some chances. I know the evaluation bar, it's suggesting that Denis is still in charge, but I just don't feel like the last couple moves have gone his way. So, David, I mean, do you see any specific plans that black can execute to sort of punish white's king in the center? Or is white's king actually going to feel safe and sound? Or, whoa, apparently there was a big blunder.
Whoa.
Wow, double question mark. And we see it. We're given a big clue here by the computer, the blue arrow. Black can pretty much win on the spot. He needs to pounce now. It's a one-off opportunity. Denis, look at that camera, frowning. Jose Martinez shaking his head. They both spotted this. Knight takes pawn. And let's show this on the board. If it happens, this is quite simple tactics here. Now, I think a bunch of moves win, but this is a simple pin. You've bagged a couple of pawns in the process. If white tries to defend, then you unleash the bishop. This beast from afar, pawn to e4. And the bishop uncaged simply wins material. You're going to win either the white knight or the white rook in the corner. This is resignable, and it's simple tactics. Jose Martinez, let it slip, and there we go. It's on the board. Knight takes c3. Look at that. Sips his water, Denis Lazovic. Double exclamation mark from the game review. He's through. As simple as that. I was about to say things have got better for white. The best position he's seen in a long time, but not that move. A big blunder there. Rook to h1, too slow. You always have to be vigilant for tactics, these one-off shots. And there we go. Resignation. Game over.
Wow.
Sudden abrupt finish to this match.
It's game over and it's match over. Denis Lazovic advances through, while for Jose Martinez, he will go down to the losers bracket. And what a turnaround it has been for the 17-year-old. He was in big trouble. The one big miss in game one. He blundered, but being resourceful, held on to that one. And he wins game three. Knight tactics all around. Knight g6 got him the first win. Knight c3 got him the second win. What a performance it has been so far in the Chessable Masters by Denis Lazovic.
We have our first winners finalist. Denis Lazovic, the 17-year-old. He continues his resounding success from a year ago. He wins his